What do we have here? That looks like a panel box. That is exactly what that is. Yes, sir, we are moving up in the world, getting ready to get electricity into this building. Finally, after 4 years of building this thing, we're gonna have a panel box. Oh, look at that. Oh, so beautiful. Except for the bent corner on the cover of them assholes. Alright, so what we have in our possession right now, this is a 100 amp panel box, but it happens to have 30 breaker spaces in it, which is awesome. 100 amps for a workshop is kind of on the small side, but you have to understand that this is a one-man shop, and the chances of me using anywhere close to 100 amps at any given time altogether is slim to none. So what do we have? So this is an Eaton, a Cutler hammer. We have our handy dandy cover. Get it stood up so you guys can see. Oh, they've changed the style of these a little bit. Trying to copycat Square D, I see. So they send some breakers with it. This box only comes with 3, a 30 amp double pole and 2 20 amp single pole breakers. Now these are, I'm actually really happy about this box right here because I like that style of panel box. That's a lot like the Square D home line, where your grounds and your neutrals come into the sides rather than over here. To me, it just makes a much neater, cleaner panel box. And like I said, these are BR style breakers, which is one of your more common breakers in your home. So that means I have a lot of these breakers kicking around, so I can use these pretty much anything I have kicking around here. Now, when you're choosing breakers for a box like this, notice, if you guys can see it, let me zoom you in a little bit. These have solid tabs on the bus bar here. That's what this is called, the bus. Some of them you're going to get are going to have these tabs. I mean, they'll still be solid down at the bottom, but they'll be split up here. And what you'll run into is some breakers, we have a nice wide open spot up here. Some breakers carry a piece of plastic down, like halfway down, or a piece of metal a lot of times. So what will happen if this is solid across here, that breaker won't fit on there. But the part I'm excited about is, if I can, there we go. These don't have that. These are the solid. So you got to pay attention when you're buying your breakers. Make sure that is, if you get a box like this, make sure you don't have that piece of metal in there. So, because what will happen is you get your breaker in, and it'll go on like halfway. You might get enough contact to make something work, but poor contact in a panel box is an invitation to fire. Oh, I'm excited about this. You guys have no idea how excited I am about this. Now, let's go through the rest of the goodies that we have to get us started. So, we have our 2 terminal adapter lock nuts for 1¼ inch. We have 2 of the fiber bushings, 1¼ inch, which they will have to go on. Might as well show you. So we can get rid of the shadows here. Okay. So the way these get set up, and I'm showing this now because it's one of the earlier things that we're going to be doing. The object tonight is to get this box mounted on the wall and try to show you a little bit of what we're doing. And then tomorrow, I hope tomorrow, we're butchering cows in the morning. So it'll be later in the day. I'm going to start digging. And I don't like digging, but I've got to do it. So we have 4 of these sweeps. I do have a hot box for conduit. I could bend it, but this is just less time consuming. And coupling, in case we need it. So there, Let's see if I can get it for you. There's our terminal adapter. And we are going to have to come in the bottom. I was hoping to come in the back of the box, but those knockouts are too big. So very important, when you get this terminal adapter up into your panel box, the ring of course goes on it. And then this bushing goes on it. Because what happens when you go to pull your wire up through there without that bushing, even though it's PVC, that's a pretty sharp corner, pretty sharp edge right there, and it actually will dig your wires and create a short. So we're basically trying to avoid anything that can create any shorts or anything like that. We don't want to take any chances. It's just the way it is. So we have an LB. This LB will take us into the building, and from outside, that way we can keep our conduit right tight to the building so it doesn't look like total garbage on the outside. Unfortunately, it needs electrical, and I probably should have sleeved all that when I poured concrete for the barn. My mistake, I know better. So we have two of those, one for the house, one for the barn. 100 amp 2-pole breaker to go in the house. We have some Duplex metal covers for 4 square boxes. These are 1.5 deep, 4 square boxes. I got the ones with the knockouts so I could put 3/4 inch conduit in between these if I so choose, and I probably will so choose. We will find out. So to get us started, I'm going to be putting one right below the panel box. We're going to have 2 circuits in it. That way, as I'm wiring up the building, I have a spot to plug in, and we can separate things out a little bit. Last but not least, in the box, we have 2 1/2-inch acorn nuts. And what these are for, it's to fix ground wires onto the ground rod we have, which we will show when we drive that into the ground tomorrow. So, now I've shown you guys what we have. We're going to get the panel box mounted for tonight, and then tomorrow we can really get after it. Alright, so setup with this stuff is always important. Now, my biggest loads and draws in this place is probably going to be the forge area in the blacksmith shop. The wood shop will have some decent stuff that'll be drying off of it also, but when I'm running, I'm thinking more of the welder, things like that. Now I have a huge air compressor for this building, but that's going to go on the outside. I know a few of you were commenting on why that forge exhaust wasn't outside, things like that. The way that is, that's going to be loud no matter what you do with it, because the sound's going to carry through the pipes. If it was, whereas like an air compressor, you could build a decent box, insulate it well, make sure you have enough airflow coming through to keep it cool, and you're not going to pick up the noise nearly as much inside. Things like blowers, exhaust fans, stuff like that, they're going to be loud inside. That's just the way it is. But, so anyway, if you want a good solid backing for your panel box, a box like that a lot of times is meant to be mounted in between 2 studs. I believe it's 14 1/4 inches across, so that gives you a little room to shim if you need to, things like that. If you're building 16 on center walls, or you can mount it right to the outside. I like them on the outside personally, because I like to be able to see my wires going into them, but that's not really feasible unless you're in a mechanical room or you're in a barn like this. After all, this is a workshop. It doesn't have to be one of those deals where it's just pretty to look at all the time. Now we're going to do our best to make it look nice, because when you're doing mechanicals, you really should take the time to make it nice, make it look good. So we've got a couple of 2x6s. Now we're just going to mount. And I know the lighting sucks, guys, but it is what it is. So we're going to hang this up. We're going to get it nice and level. Now, it's a matter of preference how high you want to hang these things. I like to make sure, I don't know, I'll hold it up and I'll show you. I kind of know where it's comfortable for me to sit there and wire in it. But you also have to keep in mind ease of accessibility. That's really important with stuff, because you have to make sure if there's a problem, somebody can get to that panel box and shut it off. So if you have a bunch of short people kicking around, like my non-rent paying midgets, sometimes You may have to, they may have to shut off a breaker, and you want to make sure that people are able to do that if they need to. There. Nice and level. Alright, so another thing that makes me kind of crazy when I see folks putting conduit in. I don't often, not often one to say you're doing it wrong, because I know how that feels and it sucks when somebody's sitting there telling you that. But the biggest thing I see people doing, putting electrical PVC conduit together, not using glue and primer. I'll see them use glue. A lot of times you'll see them use glue, and then they'll spend all this time running a nice conduit underground, and they'll go to pull a wire through it, and it'll be just filled with water. Why is it filled with water? Because you didn't use any primer. That's so important to the process. I just can't believe that's one of those things that people still skip. I've gone to pull 4 entrances through 2-inch conduit many times and just seen it completely filled with water. And that's just crazy, especially around here in the wintertime. What do you think happens to that water and you try to go pull wires through it? It freezes, it's no good. Ooh, that glue's almost past its prime, but she's... So put it down there and give it a good twist. Hold it for a couple seconds because it will try to pop back off on you, just from the hydraulic pressure of the glue. And then, because it'll drive me nuts if I don't do it, wipe the excess off. Look at me, I'm using rags. I'm not wiping it on my pants. How about that, huh? There. That's ready to go into the panel box. Now when you get boxes like these, let's see if I can get you guys can see that. Pop the camera off here. So these boxes, you get a series of knockouts for different sizes, so you can go all the way up on this one like 2.5-inch conduit or 3-inch. We only need this guy out and that next circle, and that can be tricky sometimes. Sometimes they don't like to come out very easily. You end up breaking out the one that you don't want to, so take your time doing that, because then you have to get washers, special washers and stuff to take up that space that you mangled up. All I do with these is that first one out. I use a set of side cuts quite a bit. I like the Kleins, the offsets, nice for popping out staples and whatnot. But when you're taking out this other ring, this is where you can kind of get in trouble. So sometimes I'll just clip them. See, like right there, that wants to. Just wants to be a pain right in the ass every time. So if you're not careful, sorry with the shaky camera, this ring's so thin and so easy to mess up, you kind of want to hold on to it when you're working those other pieces out. Let's see how she fits. Like a glove. It should look like that. You should have your lock nut on there and your anti-short bushing. That way your wires aren't going to scarf and scrub when you pull them up through, or when they're just sitting there under tension. Alright, so LBs, before I go and put this thing out, might as well explain what the purpose of, I'll make a ton of noise doing it, I'll explain what the purpose of this guy is. So when you want to get tight to something, so you don't have a big sweep sticking out of the side of the building, you use an LB. What's nice about an LB is these screws, this cover comes off. I got a light in my face, so it's super bright right here, but I'd rather have you guys be able to see this than not. So 2 screws, and this comes off just like that. You're going to have a silicone gasket around this all the way. You make sure that stays intact. That's very important, otherwise this LB is going to be useless to you because water will get in. Now these, I have a rule for myself. I do not set these close to the ground. I like to keep them up above the snow line as much as I can, just because they last a lot longer that way. And these gaskets, if they're constantly submerged, sooner or later they will wear out, and we don't need that. So we're going to put this on first, because the reason we're going to put this on now is then I could stuff our service cable into the box and wire that in without having to run all the way to the house. Now if I just put the wire in there and then do it, what would end up happening was I would have to feed this thing on all the way from the other end. So we don't really want to do that at this point in time. But I do want to be able to get the wire in there. We don't quite need it that long, do we? I don't like about these breakers, they make the lugs very shallow on them. So make sure you get this stuff in there good and tight, especially on aluminum. Aluminum will have a tendency to shrink down. You know, with hot and cold. Not a big deal if you get it in there tight enough, but if you don't have it, in there tight enough, it can be a real problem. All these friggin' gimmicks they put in panel boxes now. All kinds of goofy little stuff. Guys think this stuff's stiff? You had to spend a couple days wiring panel boxes with 4-aught direct burial. That's the fun one. Well, let's get that neutral tied in. Oh, I hate that. I'm really not digging all this plastic in there. But there she is. She's ready to get hooked in the house and get some power out here. Oh, I cannot, absolutely cannot wait. So, alrighty. Alright, we have a mounted electrical box in this building finally. We have the service wire wired into that panel box. We're going to have to, of course, get it buried over to the house and get it tied into the panel box inside. Then we can make this thing live, start running some circuits out here. That is going to be very nice. I tell you, I cannot wait. I'm going to start with putting a few right under that box, at least 2. Now, that is a 100 amp box, but it's really nice that it's a 100 amp box with 30 spaces in it. So 30 circuits I can run on that thing. We're running 220 out here from the box inside the house. I'm right on the cusp of too far for that number 2 wire. Now, it shouldn't be a problem, but I may derate that breaker size in the house maybe to 80 or 90 amps, because 90 amps would probably be a little bit better. But for the temperature ratings of everything we're running, all that good stuff, we're safe. We're in the distance all right. I mean, it's just slightly over 100 feet to where we have to go, but it's not too bad. I mean, it's right there. If it was another 20 feet or so, we'd be moving up to a 1/0 wire, which is a little bit bigger than the number 2. It's the next size up if you're going an aluminum wire. So anyway, at least we can get into some exciting stuff there pretty soon. You guys won't be seeing the lights dim every time I run a circular saw or something, because that does get old. But big thing I want to do, get wired up before snow flies. I'd love to get this forge area wired up and lit up and everything properly. The rest we can do as we go over the winter time, but this area is where the majority of the projects I have slated for the winter are going to take place. There's really not much going on upstairs in the wood shop this winter. I mean, I'm sure we'll do a few things, but there's really not a ton going on up there this winter. It's going to be a lot of focus down here on this first floor, getting this set up to work, and we're just so close on a lot of this stuff. I mean, now it's coming to the point where now I'm finally getting the materials. I mean, it took me a little while to save up to get this stuff. I think today I dropped just over $400 on everything to run into the barn to get power out here. Now I still have to buy plenty of MC cable. I have a bunch of 3/4 inch conduit that we're going to be running here and there. So I have plenty of that stuff to keep me busy. But all in all, I'm just so sick of running extension cords all over the place. I've had 2 100-foot extension cords run from the house into this building since we started. I mean, every time you got to mow the yard, you got to coil them up and everything else, and it's just getting old. Plus, you don't have enough power. You don't have what you need to run the things you want to run. I really want to be able to run my welder out here. I just really want to be able to run that thing. And the way it is right now, there's no way. It's a 220 volt stick welder, the 250 amp one, I believe. It requires, I think, a 50 amp circuit. I think is what I run it on in the barn, and there's no way I could run it out here right now. Just no way at all possible. So I am excited to be getting that stuff in, but. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope the explanation was clear enough for you, and I hope it didn't seem like it was all over the place. So, if you liked it, the YouTube plug, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check us out on Instagram, our website, tradesmanoffgrid.com, yada, 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 all that good stuff. There's a Facebook group called the Tradesman Channel. You feel free to join. So, anyway, have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you on the next one.